So Cash Patel is giving some testimony on the Epstein files, and already he's a DEI hire, right? He's incompetent. The dude doesn't know what he's doing in terms of the investigation with Tyler Robinson, in terms of the Epstein files. This guy just has no idea what he's doing. That's very clear. It's very obvious. But let's take a look at what he said today, September 17th, in regards to the Epstein files and his testimony. This is coming from CNN. It says, what we covered, long day, FBI Director Kash Patel testified before the House Judiciary Committee for nearly 5 hours Wednesday, his second longest day on Capitol Hill in a row. His second long day on Capitol Hill in a row. It was on the Epstein files, Senate hearing on Tuesday. Let's get into the details. It says, while Jeffrey Epstein was an occasional subplot during FBI Director Kash Patel's testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, it was a huge focus of his appearance in front of the House Judiciary Committee. That really me up. It was a huge focus of his appearance in front of the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, which frequently turned heated. The director was repeatedly evasive when the subject turned to President Donald Trump's proximity to the files. Patel was willing to address Trump's proximity to Epstein in a way beneficial to the president, saying there were no questionable photos of Trump with women that were not, or people that were not above the age of 18. He was cautious when asked about other Epstein trafficking victims, however. Democrats left no doubt they intend to keep pushing the Epstein files issue. Patel said he'd investigate the Trump entry in Epstein's birthday book. Okay. So there's a couple of things that they mentioned here. Let's go through them and let's talk about them. First of all, he was being essentially deposed by the House Judiciary Committee about the Trump association with Epstein, about the Epstein files, about who's in them, who's not in them. And it's not just Democrats that are pushing them. It's also Thomas Massie. If you don't remember who Thomas Massie is, he's one of the gentlemen that started organizing the effort in order to get the Epstein files out, and he brought the victims up to Capitol Hill, right? That happened a week or two ago. The victims started giving a speech, and they're doing that. See, this is a thing that crosses both the Democrats and the Republicans. There are people on both sides that want the files out, that want the Epstein files out. They're not taking no for an answer. The victims have come onto Capitol Hill, traveled to DC, to dedicate their time in order to receive some sort of justice, right? So when the FBI Director Kash Patel is being essentially deposed, and he's saying, yo, we didn't find anything. We went through all of these documents. We've had all of this evidence that we've combed through, and there are no other perpetrators. Okay, but Pam Bondi said there was 1,000 victims, maybe even over 1,000. But you're going to sit up here and tell the committee with a straight face that there's nothing to see here. They really think the American people are stupid by design, right? This is all by design. So when people start talking about like government cover-ups and conspiracy theories, and we end up finding out things 20, 30, 50 years later, like Fred Hampton, like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King, like the crack epidemic. When we start finding out these things so much later, this thing that's going on with Kash Patel are the small cracks that make the public look at the government and say, we can't really trust you, because what you're telling us and the evidence that actually exists is contradictory. We know that there's at least 1,000 pieces of evidence. And then when you come and you testify in front of Congress and say there's no more perpetrators besides Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, even though there's very, very significant evidence, that Epstein had his hand in a lot of people's pockets. And then you get up there and say there's no ties between Trump and Epstein, even though they were friends, even though it's been reported through multiple sources that he did write the letter, even though it's proven through multiple sources that the signature that was on the letter, on the birthday card, on the birthday book, to Jeffrey Epstein match the signature that Trump has given to other people. So if you're not tracking, excuse me, other people that have received letters or whatever from Trump have come forward and say, yo, look at this letter that he gave to Epstein in his birthday book, and then look at the letter that he wrote me. They match signatures, right? These are third-party people, nothing to do with the FBI, nothing to do with politics, just people that have met Trump over the years that were corroborating that that was his signature on the birthday book. So when Kash Patel gets up there and he tells the American public, essentially, there's nothing to see here with the Epstein files, we have to question, does our government really work for us? Or do they work in order to keep people that are in power in their seats? We really have to ask that, because there cannot be a government that just we willingly let them pull the wool over our eyes. We have to have some sort of control over what the government does, what the government says. We don't exist in order to serve the government. The government exists in order to serve us. And if we're not satisfied, that's unacceptable. It's not just throwing your hands up and be like, well, they said it's, it's nothing to see here. They owe us answers. They exist for our benefit. We don't exist for them to rule over and govern and all this type of stuff. The government exists in order to serve the will of the people. Whether that be the left or the right, it doesn't really matter, but we, the people in general, deserve and demand answers. From Kash Patel specifically, but all of our politicians in general. Let's go back to the CNN article. It says FBI Director Kash Patel this week became the first prominent Justice Department official to testify under oath since the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files blew up in its face. Once again, that's Pam Bondi, that's Trump specifically, that's Kash Patel, the FBI director. All of these people have been waiting for this story to be pushed under the rug, and it's not being pushed under the rug. We're not letting it go. While Epstein was an occasional subplot during the testimony, blah, 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 after one Democrat said that the courts had called bullshit on the administration's strategy to try and get grand jury testimony unsealed, Patel ultimately responded, I'm going to borrow your terminology and call bullshit on your entire career in Congress because you've been a disgrace to the American people. This is not an argument. This is not an argument for or against the fact that the Epstein files exist or don't exist. You insulting somebody when you're being deposed on the Epstein files is, for one, it's disgusting in terms of the fact that you're supposed to be the FBI director and responsible to the American people for information being disseminated to us, right? And two, this is not an argument to say that they do or don't exist. You're running out the clock in order to incite some sort of emotional back and forth. Let's just get to the point. Let's stick to the point. What's in the Epstein files? Who's in the Epstein files? And no matter how many times we have to circle back to it, we're going to get to the answer because the people demand it on both sides of the aisle. At another point, Democratic Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington pressed Patel repeatedly on whether he had ever met with Epstein's victims. The director, again, didn't answer directly, eventually saying, any insinuation by you or any people on your side that I am not man-hunting child predators and sex traffickers, just look at the stats. Okay, so let me see if they get into this. Here's what to know about Patel's testimony on Epstein. He's repeatedly evasive, blah, blah, blah. Vouched for Trump on one key point. Cautious when asked about other Epstein trafficking victims. So I don't have it with me, but there was a point where he was asked about that part regarding, let me see where it is. There was a part where he was asked about meeting with the other Epstein victims. The Epstein victims that ended up coming to Capitol Hill. And he said basically that there was no point in meeting with them. What do you mean? You have people that are directly first person testimony saying that they were victimized. They have names. They know who it is. And they've even offered, if the government is not going to come out with a list of names, that the victims would do it themselves. But the FBI director, who before he got into office swore up and down that there was some sort of deep state conspiracy to cover up the Epstein files. He gets into the chair, has the opportunity to comb through them with the utmost clearance needed in order to have that information, and decides, victims don't need them. That's not justice. So when you say any insinuation by you or any people on your side that I'm not manhunting child predators and sex traffickers, it's not just an insinuation. I'm saying directly, you're not doing it. And if you are doing it, you're not doing it to the extent with which you could in this specific case of the Epstein files. And is that because they don't exist? It may be. That's what you're saying. Or is it because you work for somebody that may or may not be implicated? That's also a valid line of questioning. Because more than anything that Trump has, he has loyalists that believe specifically in him over, adhering to the Constitution, over valuing the American people who you're supposed to be serving. There are a bunch of people in the Trump administration, in the MAGA movement, the America First movement, that value protecting Trump, protecting his interests, and doing his bidding over doing what they're supposed to do, which is serve the American people, act as a extension of the will of the American people.